The Hogsty is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of thehogsty.com.
By fans, for fans, the Hogsty. And now, here's your host, Sean Conti.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a new episode of the Hogsty. Excited to be with you. This is Alex. Sean and Jamal are out today, so it's just Steve and I doing the dynamic duo as we've done so many times before. Steve, I hope you're doing well down there. I know you've had a bit of a rough couple days. We don't want to go into that necessarily, what's going on down in Houston. But we want to get into something that's actually good news, and that is that we have now gotten the Hogsty affiliated with another website, Armchair All-Americans. And Steve, you were really the brainchild behind this, so I'm excited about it, but I want you to kind of go in the details for people what this means for our show.
Okay. Armchair All-Americans is a great site, first of all, who they have lots of info on everything you could possibly imagine, from college football, college basketball, to professional sports and the NBA and baseball and basketball and hockey and everything else. They are going to be hosting our show, both the Hogsty and It's Just Business, on their website, so it's hopefully going to bring a new audience to us. Hopefully there's a few new people here listening today, and it'll hopefully introduce a lot of you all who've been with us for a long time to everything that they have to offer. Mm-hmm. I think we're going to have in the future some of their writers and producers on our show in various times as guests to talk about their various expertise. So it's a very good thing for everybody. Very excited on. This is something we've been working on for a while, and we've been through a million iterations of what we want to do with this. But for the meantime, you can also find our show on armchairallamericans.com, and we hope you check them out.
Yeah. I am excited about the idea of maybe getting some of their college guys on here to talk about some of these draft picks that we've gotten this year. You and I were talking offline about maybe going and doing that, finding someone from the Alabama page of their site. Who knows?
Because we have a few Alabama people now.
Yeah, nothing promised on our end, but I think that's kind of our vision of how this could help. And that'd be great, because let's be honest, you and I don't watch a lot of Bama football, so... Yeah,
no, because I would, except that I hate Nick Saban with the passion and fire of 1,000 suns, and so I can't bring myself to watch too much of it.
I just can't stand saying Bama and not thinking of the DC slang term Bama. So, that's another thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not nearly as much of a DC native as you are. I'm not a DC native.
But you even know that term, and it's not a good term.
Yeah. And so when you say a bunch of Bamas,
right.
I mean, that means a whole nother thing to our audience than it would to these Roll Tide people, and they don't really know it.
Yeah, I want to actually get someone on just to ask them about that. If they know,
do you know what we're
that's a derogatory term here.
And in terms of what's going on in Houston this week, my thoughts and prayers to anybody affected by what happened down in Santa Fe, Texas, because that's pretty near me, and it it's certainly a very sad thing. It's we're here to entertain you and not give you politics. We won't get into it, but
right.
my personal prayers to everybody.
Right, horrible situation. Hate when I hate that this is happening so much these days. But
we're here to distract you with football nonsense.
Right. Let's get back into football nonsense then, Steve. And we are going to be talking a lot about the D-line today. So let's start with that poll question you did about the D-line and some of those responses. I also want to talk to you about the other thing you did on social media that I think should be a more routine thing, and that is the GIF off situation that we had.
I know. That was great.
Yeah.
We'll get to that. And frankly, we have a poll this week because I did not forget.
Right.
Because the past couple weeks I have honestly forgotten to do the poll, which is entirely on me. And I almost forgot this one. This got posted a couple hours late.
Yeah,
so
it's all right.
Sue me. Okay, so the poll question today was that the Redskins have spent 2 years rebuilding their defensive line. Assuming health, how much better do you think the defensive line will be this year compared to last year's defensive line? Now, I got to say, before we get into this, that a bunch of people did not like my choices.
Right.
And to that I say, I'm sorry. We whipped this up quickly. Could it have been better? Maybe. I'll give you the choices and tell you what I was thinking, even though it might not have come out quite the way I wanted. So the choices were about the same, slightly better, worse, and then top 10 unit in 2018. And the top 10 unit one was what some people didn't like. What I was trying to get across was, do you think the D-line has a chance to be elite?
Right.
But what we really needed was another choice that said, as opposed to just slightly better, we needed a lot better.
Right.
That's maybe what I should have
should have
used.
just been a lot better. That's what we should have done.
Probably so, but in my head I was thinking, if you think this has a chance to be an elite unit,
right,
vote for that and tell me why. So those are the choices, and I think most people just kind of, if they thought it was going to be a lot better, they voted for top 10.
Right.
So that's what it turned out to be. So for those of you who hated it, so sorry, but I don't care that much. So as we do every week, though, Alex, tell us what let's save your opinion until we get into the D-line, but tell us how you think the public would have voted for this.
I think they're going to go slightly better. I don't know. I didn't really vote. And somebody on our blog comment section actually took a still image of where the poll was at one point and was posting it in there. Like, I don't know.
Don't do that, guys.
To really care. I think it was Khan. He really cares about
Who?
Khan.
I don't. Oh, him.
Yeah, yeah.
I've gotten to know these people because we have a core group of them.
Right.
I don't think some of them like me very much.
But anyway,
some of them
I don't know why he cared so much about who was winning that poll, but he posted screenshots at one point. But I'm going to say
we've done way too many polls for me to care about, too much about these. Okay, so you say slightly better.
Yeah.
Well, as it turns out, you were not correct.
Aww.
But we got a pretty darn good participation by this. I'd call this one a double to the wall.
Nice.
In terms of participation.
Is it all the way airing to the wall, or is it hopping to the wall?
No, double to the wall on the fly.
Oh, on the fly. Okay.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay, by a vote of 58%, people voted for top 10 unit in 2018. And again, a lot of those votes, they really mean just a lot better.
Right.
Because judging from the comments, that's where everybody threw it in there. So, but 58% vote was top 10 unit. 39% voted for slightly better. Mere 2% of you voted for about the same. And I think in terms of the worst category, this may be the smallest number we've ever gotten that I can remember on any poll. 1% of you voted for worse. And I don't know how you could possibly think, you must just really hate Daron Payne. Maybe some of you out there like LSU diehards or something, maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know how you could possibly think they could get worse. Especially since they were already 32nd. They were 32nd in yardage, so it's hard to get worse. But okay.
No, in terms of place, yes, but in terms of statistics, we've seen them worse.
Yeah, that's true. But I don't know how you could, the Redskins spend a first-round draft pick and a fifth-round draft pick, and somehow they're going to get worse.
Right.
That's, of course, that's the 1% minority vote out there.
I think that was A.J. Francis. He might have seen our poll.
He might have been he might have been the one. A.J. or the Francis family,
Maybe.
Because 1% could mean, 1% is more than one person.
Right.
So, okay, so in terms of comments, first one we're going to go to here is Chris T, who is at Chris_DFB. He says, based on what I saw before the injuries, I would say significantly better. In the game versus the Raiders, they were terrific. And he's talking about how the D-line was noticeably bad in the first quarter last season.
Sure.
Lauren and Caden's dad, who is at Lauren Can's dad, who says, if they can all stay healthy, it's one hell of a unit. Injuries destroyed it last year, and we've got some major upgrades in depth. It's all about giving the big guys a break. And I wanted to read that one because he pointed out the injuries, because a lot of you out there who thought they were terrible have forgotten that the injuries
I think
are so awful.
anyone who's a hardcore fan knows the injuries were a major issue. I do want to go back to get a better screen name there, guy. Don't put your kids' names in your screen name. That's a little creepy.
He loves his kids,
putting your kids out on social media, that's a whole thing.
Or maybe this is someone else who's just creeping on Lauren and Caden. Maybe it's someone who's truly creepy.
Creepier.
Yeah. Maybe this is not Lauren and Caden's dad at all.
That's horrifying.
Maybe it's like their mom or something, and
she's
she
using
just really
it
loves
to
her,
catfish
her dad. I don't know. I'm just babbling.
Yeah, I get it.
Ignore me. Okay, we'll go with, here's another terrible screen name. Just Your Average Fly Guy.
Oh, bad screen
No,
names.
He's written in before under different screen names at MC Redskins.
Yeah, okay.
He says, yeah, so he's a good commenter, but we just make fun of your name because,
that's half of the fun for me with the tweets.
Yeah. He writes, it's hard to vote because we were 32nd against the run. No one knows where we would have finished without the injuries. I can't say we're going to be top 10, but I also think slightly better isn't really an improvement either. To me, slightly better is 28th against the run, and worse, no way. Okay. And he's very right about that.
Yeah.
So I like that. We're going to go with P.F. Fangmeyer.
Okay,
for our next comment.
P.F. Fangmeyer, I see him comment a lot on our stuff, and he even comments on things I just write on Twitter that have nothing to do with football now. So he's a major fan, I guess.
Oh, good. Well, we appreciate Mr. Fangmeyer's
We have a fan.
We have one. Okay, he writes, I said a little better because the offense will attack our weakest point, so the run defense should be much improved, but our back end is suspect. If D-line doesn't get home, the stats won't look good, so statistically only a little better. We'll be the strongest unit on D, however. I read his comment because he had kind of a unique view, which is that the back end is going to be the weak point, and the D-line is going to be better, but meld them together, and the stats aren't going to look good.
That's an interesting point of view. I like that. Good for him.
Yeah, that's a pretty good take. Because most other people here thought they were going to be significantly better in some way.
Sure.
And the last one I'll read is just because he wrote in, our buddy Chris Larry decided to comment.
Oh, Chris.
Chris Larry of It's Just Business fame. He writes.
What time did he write this?
Oh, God.
Do you have the time and date or no?
No. It was May 17th is when he wrote this.
All right.
But I don't have the time. He writes, I voted slightly, although that undersells my enthusiasm. Top 10 seems too high. I'm setting up shop in between these two options, which, again, his view is kind of what a lot of people had.
I was trying to, if we had a date, I was going to see, was he drinking and watching the Caps when he wrote this or not? But that doesn't sound like a homerish watching hockey.
No. It was a decent take.
Right.
It's a decent take. And so, again, sorry for the confusing choice there, but, that's what happens when you throw it up at the last minute.
No, I think it came out okay. I saw the people critiquing the top 10 thing, but, I mean, just based on what you saw, universally everyone thinks we're going to improve at some level. It's just a question of how
Aside
much.
from the weird 1% of you.
Yeah, except for the weird 1%. And there's always the weird 1%. Can we just call that?
Always.
Can we have that be the title, the weird 1%?
We can if you want. Right. You're Mr. Title.
That's true. I am Mr. Title. So
I'm no good at
you guys are the title now. But let's get into it. I'd
like to know if any of you out there listening, before you continue, if you voted for the 1% worse in there, write into us and tell us why you think that, because I'm really legitimately curious. Well, making fun of you aside, I really want to know how you think this D-line will be worse. So if you have a strong opinion about it, let us know. Write in.
Yeah, I would be okay with that. Write in. People should write in more. Send us more tweets. Send us more questions. I like it. We like the interaction. But let's get into your and my point of view. I think we both would agree it's going to get better. It's just a question of how much better will it look at this point.
Yeah.
Putting aside the injuries question, because you can never predict who's going to get hurt. On paper, I feel like we got rid of one subpar lineman in McLean and replaced him with two prospects that look, at the very least, like they would match his production, if not exceed it, year one.
Considering he had almost no production,
right.
It's a low bar.
Right. Well, that's the point.
That's the point.
Yeah.
So they can't possibly get worse. And frankly, McLean didn't play much.
No.
Last year
he
really
came on in a couple games, but not much. You're right. I don't know what you're going to make of some of these guys like Payne or Deron Payne. I honestly don't know what. We'll get into all of them later.
We'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that.
But just on paper, it looks like you replaced a C with a couple of guys who have question marks. You've got guys who came along really well at the end of the year last year. Like, I really love Anthony Lanier. I don't see how you can't look at it and say we're going to get better. I really don't.
Since you brought up Terrell McLean, he had 17 tackles and 2 sacks last year.
Right.
So, again, that's not a high bar to replace. And so you're exactly right, Alex. I mean, to the extent that at a bare minimum between Tim Settle and Deron Payne, they really ought to be able to produce more than 17 tackles.
Right.
So at the very least, we'll get more out of them together than we got out of McLean.
Sure. I think that's probably a safe bet.
Yeah. You want to just get into the D-line preview since we're talking about it?
We can get into it since this is our D-line review show where we're going to just go through some of these D-line guys. I'm going to let you tell me who you want to start with, because I would say the rookies, but you might want to start with Allen and the guys who started last year. Your call.
Yeah, well, let's start with Jonathan Allen because I think he's the star of the D-line.
No question.
Or hopefully will be. 6'3", 288 pounds, obviously out of Alabama. He was our number 1 draft pick last year.
Mm-hmm.
On paper, if you just looked at his numbers and didn't watch any of the games, you would think he was a bust.
Sure.
He played 5 games, started 5, 1 sack, 3 tackles, 7 assisted tackles. That's terrible production from a number 1 draft pick. But those of you who watch the game know that while the numbers didn't so much add up, he made a tremendous difference, I think, in the defensive front 7.
He was getting in the backfield a whole lot.
Yeah, he was. He was getting in the backfield a whole lot. I think once he gets better, he has a Liz Frank injury, and Liz Frank is a nasty mistress. It seems like we get our fair share of those.
Oh, I think we get more than our fair share of Liz's.
Yeah, Liz, Liz, somebody was offended. Somebody dumped Liz.
Yeah.
Treated her wrong,
Yeah.
something. Because Liz has visited us many times. But point is, Allen is a guy who, if he can stay healthy, I think will only get better. And I think he's got a combination of strength and athleticism and smarts that will allow him to sort of anchor this defensive line going forward. I think if you want a negative from him, and it probably goes for Payne too. What you have to kind of question about some of these Alabama guys is whether they're sort of maxed out. Sometimes these Alabama guys don't get a ton better when they get to the NFL.
Right.
And the reason is they're well coached at Alabama. And so and there's a lot of good players at Alabama. And so none of them are, one-man gangs, for lack of a better term, I think, at Alabama. And so you bring these guys in sort of knowing that you're not going to see a tremendous leap, perhaps, from these guys. And so if you want to knock, that may be it, is that Jonathan Allen sort of might be what he is. But what he is, I think, was pretty darn good last year. And I'm excited about the prospects of him coming back healthy to see what he can do to anchor this defensive line. I think since we have these new personnel in, I think he's going to pretty much be a dedicated defensive tackle. I don't think you're going to see him playing nose tackle too much.
No. But
you've got way too many other guys.
To be clear, that's more. Some people say defensive tackle. I still look at it as a defensive end in a 3-4. I don't know why.
Well, you're right.
Yeah.
I mean, in the defensive end, it is more of a defensive end in a 3-4.
Right.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of where they line up. I mean, the Redskins don't run the same defense all the time.
Right.
We're only in a traditional 3-4 base a little bit of the time. And so what you're talking about is him lining up from sort of the 3 technique maybe out to the 5,
Right.
depending on what formation they're in.
And
So
I think he's a little bit better at the 3 technique, personally. That's just me. But
yeah. What you're not going to see him in is a 0, 1, or 2, which is 0 is over the nose guard.
Right.
1 is just to the outside of the nose guard, and 2 is just to the inside of the I said nose guard, to the center.
Right.
And then 2 is just the inside of the guard. I don't think you're going to see him in that range too much. I think
keep him in between the guard and the tackle. That's where he's best.
Yeah.
He can shoot the gap, or he can take on the guard one-on-one and win that battle 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a 4-3 defensive end. This is not who he is. I mean, he's only 6'3". He doesn't have the speed for that. I mean, this guy truly is, I think, best suited as a 3-4 defensive end, defensive tackle, whatever.
He's got the perfect size for it. He's just shy of 300 pounds. You could maybe bulk him up to that at the beginning of the year, knowing he'll slim down over a year.
Yeah.
I think the fact that we've now added so much help for him along that line is going to be a big thing. Let's get to the other big name from last year, though, and my guy from Temple, Matt Ioannidis, played with that club on one hand last season, kept on going. What? I mean, I'm going to be a homer about a guy like Matt Ioannidis. But so, Steve, give me some.
Alex went to Temple, for people who've forgotten.
Yeah.
Alex went to Temple. Yeah, objectivity. Okay. Again, this is another guy. If you look at it on paper, it didn't look like he did too much. He played in 14 games, started 10, 13 tackles, 14 assisted tackles, which is kind of 4.5 sacks, which is pretty darn good for an interior defensive lineman. But the number of tackles probably doesn't wow you particularly.
No.
But what I think you saw when he was healthy, you got to remember that Matt Ines was really beat up basically all year long, and he really toughed it out when he didn't have to.
Like I said, he was playing one-handed for a good chunk of the
he was.
year.
Right. And I think when you saw a healthy Ioannidis and Allen in the game, they were a pretty darn stout team. And I think Ioannidis made a tremendous leap from his rookie year to his sophomore year in terms of his ability to understand defenses, his technique. I think Jim Tomsula did wonders with this guy to help him along to improve his technique. He's clearly a grinder and a worker. He's not flashy.
Right.
I think this is a guy, I don't know how many Pro Bowls he's going to make, in years to come, but I think this is a player who's going to be a very, very solid starter for years to come for this team.
Yeah, I mean, similar to how Alabama is just a great defensive school, when Temple's good, they always build on defense. I say that as someone who watches them a lot. Their best years have always been defensive front teams and blue-collar guys. They love that kind of blue-collar lunch pail mentality, and Matt Ioannidis kind of exemplifies exactly that when you watch him play.
Well,
he cares about his technique. He cares about getting the proper coaching, and that's showed in what he produced.
Oh, listen, he was consistent at Temple. In his last 2 years at Temple, played 25 games from 2014 to 2015, 44 tackles, total tackles in 14 and 42 in the other. He's always had a few sacks. He has 10 sacks, in his career in 3 years. He was there at 4 years, really only played 3
right. Well, I mean,
years. But
how many guys played their freshman year?
Oh, I'm not criticizing for it. I mean, it is what it is. He was very, very consistent that entire time. You can tell this guy is a grinder. He's the stereotype. I hate the cliche of the lunch pail guy, but this is who Matt Ioannidis is. Again, with him, it's health. He's got to get healthy. But, I think even with the new guys coming in, I think the Redskins at this point look at him as a future starter.
Yeah, I think so
starter,
too.
A current starter, not future.
I'm sure the Redskins are still going to do their rotation thing they love to do. But
you have to.
Yeah, you have to on the defensive line. But he'll definitely be a big part of the conversation, I think, going forward. Let's move on. Do you want to keep doing guys who are here and just roll through them first before we get to the rookies?
Want.
Yeah.
I got them all.
Yeah, all right. Let's go Ziggy Hood.
Ziggy Hood.
The guy I think fans love to hate, despite the fact that he might be one of the nicest guys on the team from what you see him doing extracurricular-wise. And a lot of charity work. Nice guy, it sounds like. But fans love to hate on Ziggy Hood.
Fans do love to hate on Ziggy Hood.
Yeah.
First of all, his real name is Evander.
Right.
If we ever get him on the show, we need to ask him where Ziggy came from because I'm really curious.
He liked the cartoon.
So somebody write that down.
The comics.
Is that what it was? Okay.
No, I have no idea.
Maybe so. So we got to ask him. So somebody out there write that down and tell us, when we have him on, we need to get him on just to ask him that.
Right.
And we'll tell him it'll take 30 seconds. Now, remember this about Ziggy Hood. This was a first-round draft pick in 2009. He came out of Missouri, and again, this is another guy whose numbers didn't look spectacular necessarily.
Right.
88 total tackles in 4 years at Missouri. It's kind of, but obviously, people thought he had a lot of potential because he's a first-round draft pick in Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is known for defense.
Right. Certainly
was back in that era. He really only started 2 years at Pittsburgh. In 11 and 12, it didn't really produce that much. Had in those 2 years, in his 4-year Pittsburgh career, 141 tackles, 14 sacks. In the 2 years he started, 23 tackles, solo tackles, 25 solo tackles, 12 and 17 assists, respectively. So he has potential, but it wasn't enough for the Steelers to ultimately keep him.
Right.
And then he moves to Jacksonville, and Jacksonville gets rid of him basically almost immediately.
Right, and now he's here, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and remember, he signed a 4-year contract in Jacksonville in 2014, and then they cut him in the middle of 2015. I don't know if I know He has not lived up to first-round potential, but this is a guy who's a solid vet.
Right.
He's 6'3", 305. He can play. He's got Jay Gruden's famed, valued versatility.
Right.
He can kind of play anywhere along the defensive line. He's going to turn in an honest effort. He's not going to wow anybody.
No. He's not,
he's played
he's
a
not
lot
gonna
of
blow up a guy ever.
He's
a space eater, though. That's what he does.
Yeah. And even though he's a little bit undersized, maybe for the nose tackle, we saw him a lot last year lined up at nose tackle.
Yeah.
And I don't know how long that's going to continue considering some of the other guys we have, which we'll get to. But for those of you out there hating on Ziggy, just, don't expect him to live up to first-round potential. But if you look at him as a solid vet with a good attitude who can produce and play and be competent when necessary, that's what you have in Ziggy.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I see there is an inexpensive second-string player. And, we'll probably get into at the end who's your first line, who's your second line guys. To me, if he's on your second line, that's a perfectly fine second line option. I don't know about him at nose tackle, but like I said, he doesn't. The problem with Ziggy Hood was he wasn't getting a lot of penetration when you watch him play. Right. But he was very good at making sure that the center or the guard, whoever he was lined up against, wasn't blowing him back.
He only had 25 tackles last year.
Right.
13 solo, half a sack. So, again, he's another guy on paper didn't look like he produced a ton. But this is also a guy who only has a $2.7 million contract.
Right, and we also have to always keep in mind that the scheme we run, the 3-4 scheme, is not designed for these guys to make big plays.
Right.
These guys' job is to open it up for the linebackers.
Right.
By and large.
And that's that's all 3-4s, the setup for most of them, and particularly in D.C., and we've seen that play out over many years with the various middle linebackers we've had here, going all the way back to London Fletcher, who had 1 billion tackles. You know.
Will Compton had like 150, and everyone still said he sucked,
Right, yeah. Yeah, exactly right. And Will, of course, is not here anymore. No. And I still love, the time when we invited Will Compton to listen to our show, and of course, I did that, not realizing that very show was when we were bashing Will Compton.
Right,
so I'm kind of glad he didn't listen.
He
told us to get lost.
He's apparently now starting his own podcast in Tennessee with another Tennessee Titan, which I think's funny.
He'd be good.
Yeah,
he'd be good.
He's a character.
He's a character.
Speaking of characters, let's get to a guy who I think has shown a lot of character, and that is Anthony Lanier II. He was kind of under the radar prospect for the team. Was he the guy Doug Williams secretly begged to come to the Redskins and got him over?
Well, yeah. See, Anthony Lanier came from Alabama A&M, which is an historically black college, which is right up Doug's alley because he was the head coach at Grambling.
Right.
This is the guy, that Doug, before he was the senior vice president of personnel, this is a guy who Doug loved and did recruit.
Right.
Yes.
Doug Williams had that weird job where his job was just go find one under the radar diamond in the rough player or something.
He was the quote personnel executive, whatever that means.
And Lanier was the guy he found. And Steve, I went and watched some highlights of Lanier last year. That guy got at the quarterbacks a whole lot.
Oh yeah, he did.
He
had 5 sacks. He didn't start and had 5 sacks.
Right.
I've always thought that Anthony Lanier may be truthfully best suited as a 4-3 defensive end. I mean, I'll take him. He's on our team.
Right.
But he's 6'6", 286 pounds. He kind of has the classic body type of a true 4-3 defensive end, which we don't have and we're not going to have, again.
That's understandable.
Yeah, but, I mean, he produced.
Yeah.
5 sacks from a rotational backup. Played 11 games, started 2.
That's a sack every other game, basically.
Yeah. So I'll definitely take it. He's a worker, a grinder, undrafted, free agent. He has this, I don't know if this guy is another guy is going to be a star. And Lanier may be a guy that if you give him more time, his effectiveness diminishes perhaps somewhat. But I think he has the chance right now with this rebuilding defensive line to really carve out a solid place and a solid rotational piece in this defense.
I mean, listen, if he can be a 5-sack-a-season guy for us for a couple years, I would say, all right, you're in the NASCAR package. Whenever we're doing that 3rd and long NASCAR package they love to do, you just pin the earths back and go after the quarterback, kid. That's all I want you to do. I don't want you to learn anything else. Just
that may be him, because again, I mean, if you give me truth serum, I'd still think that he may be if I were him, I'd look for a 4-3 team. But we don't want to tell him that because we want him to be here for a good long while.
Right. And you know what? If he still can get us 5 sacks and he's not even ideally suited, I don't care if he should be on a 4-3 team.
Yeah,
yeah.
So we like it. Anthony Lanier, we like him. He has potential to be a very solid player, and I agree with the order you put him in. In this, I think it fits.
Yeah. All right, so just kind of wrapping up the guys who were here last year, really. Stacey McGee returns for another season. The prototypical nose size didn't really show up a whole lot, but he played a whole lot. People just didn't realize it.
He started 10 games.
Yeah.
His statistics last year, played in 16 games, started 10, 24 solo tackles, 20 assisted tackles, just 44 total tackles on the year, no sacks. I mean, this is one of the dynamic duo that was brought in last year who, along with Terrell McLean, was intended to be the defensive line of the future.
Well, or at least the holdovers for the defensive. I mean, they were both 27.
I mean, he has a 5-year. He has a 5-year contract,
Right.
though.
Right.
I mean, it's not like they signed him for a year. Frankly, it struck me as a guy who they signed. 5 years. They signed these guys, if I recall, fairly late in the free agency season after sort of the A-level prospects were gone. It struck me a little bit as they had to spend some money on somebody, and so Stacey McGee and Terrell McLean were there. That's sort of what I saw. I don't know if Stacey's a part of the future. He's going to have to really show up this year and be a more dynamic player and be more of an impact player to prove to the coaching staff that he has a future with this organization. Because the other thing about Stacey is that he has a healthy contract hit.
Right.
He's got a $4.8 million cap hit this year, which is a lot.
Yes, that is.
Yeah, I mean, in next year, he's got another $4.8 million cap hit next year. So with all these new guys and some of the guys that are going to develop, he's going to have to prove that he can be an impact player, not just come in and be a rotational guy. He needs to make an impact in order to keep that, to stay here with those kind of contract numbers.
And like I kind of said, though, he's a bigger guy. I mean, I think you said, 340, right? That's what I see him listed as. So he's really your prototypical nose in size.
Yes.
And, you know how much I've harped on, even though you don't use him a lot, you need that guy. So hopefully...
Well, as it turns out, we have a bunch of candidates.
Yeah, we do. And so maybe the Redskins are kind of seeing it that way, too. Let's move on.
Well, one more thing about Stacey, though.
Okay.
I think he's probably... I don't think he's skilled enough to be a two-gapping nose tackle despite his size.
No.
I'm not sure any of these guys are really. And so it may actually help him. And we asked Doc Walker about this, and he said basically the coaching staff's going to do what they're going to do. So I think it'll actually help Stacey if he can remain in a one-gap system where he doesn't have to, occupy that much space.
Basically
so
line up in an A-gap and go kind of thing? Gotcha.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep. All right, so let's move on to the eternally injured Phil Taylor real quick.
I know where you're going.
Another prototypical nose tackle type, first-round pick, but he's been hurt for 2 years straight, basically, if not more, right? It might be more.
No, it's 2.
Okay.
No, he's been hurt for 2 years straight. He hasn't actually played a football game since 2014.
Right. Okay, so that's a long time ago at this point.
It is a long time ago.
I think I just
hopefully
bought my
remembers
house
how to
in
strap on
2014.
I hope he remembers how to strap on his pads.
Yeah. Somebody might need to help him, tie his shoes or something. I don't know.
I think he can tie his shoes.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he wears flip-flops a lot.
If you're 340 pounds, you may have to wear flip-flops a lot. I don't know if you can reach your toes.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that part. But I think he's a guy who, look at him, you just see a lot of potentials, but it's kind of like the whole Junior Gillette thing we had. You kept on being like, will this guy be the guy that we all saw, or will he just kind of be there?
I mean, it's kind of sad because injuries. He's had a ton of injuries, and he was injured in college. Mm-hmm. He had a knee injury in college. Look, also, he has a background I mean, I don't want to hold it too much against him. It was a long time ago, but he left Penn State for Baylor for a reason, that had to do with his personal conduct. So that's out there. But in terms of professional stuff, I mean, the Cleveland Browns let him go. Think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
The 0 in a million Cleveland Browns let him walk away.
Yep.
He was out of football completely in 2015 after he got cut from the Browns. The Broncos signed him, immediately went on IR. Came to D.C., and then he immediately went on IR again.
Right.
And so I think at this point, if this man gets on the field during a regular season game, it's a victory.
For him,
this
it
is
is.
Like a there's nowhere to go but up kind of thing. So I'm not counting on Phil to do anything. And if we get any production out of him, that's a win.
Right.
I mean, he's got a small contract, so I mean, come on.
Yeah. All right. I mean, you wish well for these guys, but you also have to be realistic. Once that injury bug starts biting them and they're 30 years old, there's some writing on the wall there.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just going to briefly mention two guys who I honestly haven't really tracked. Andre Pipkins and Tarvarius Barnes.
Yes.
They are on the roster, and that's about all I know about those two.
Okay, Andre Pipkins is a guy who's been around and around and around and around.
Are you sure? Because his bio says he's only a 1-year vet.
Well, you're right. I'm looking at the wrong. I'm sorry. I'm looking at.
You're looking at Barnes.
I'm looking at. Okay, Pipkins. I do have Pipkins. Pipkins was a guy who started out at Michigan and ended up at Texas Tech.
So he has been around a little.
A little bit, yeah. I'm glad you corrected me, though. So, no, he hasn't been around. But anyway, he was on our practice squad last year. This is another guy who's really a body type of a true nose tackle,
right.
Which is why I said, they have a bunch of candidates. Look, I mean, Tim Settle, we'll get to Settle. Mm-hmm. He may be the feature of this. But Kip Pipkins is a guy who can carve out a role for himself if he outplays guys like Taylor.
Right.
Guys like McGee, who is very expensive. Pipkins is on a minimum contract.
Right.
And
the Redskins
he's going to have a chance to
cheap
prove
at some
himself.
Spots.
Yeah, and he has a chance to prove himself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what can you say? There's not much more to say about him. We didn't see much of him.
I don't even remember seeing him in preseason, frankly.
No,
I don't know if he was around for preseason.
He was, but I mean,
okay.
Not a lot.
All right, and then Barnes is the other guy. You said he's been a journeyman. He's 26. Yep. I have that written down. But
yeah, I'm sorry. Barnes is the guy. Barnes was is 2015. It's when he entered the league.
Okay.
He's been with the Saints, the Seahawks, and the Buccaneers. Undrafted free agent, so he's been around. Was waived by all those teams. He came to us last year. Signed. He's one of these reserve feature contract guys. He's 6'4", 284, so he's a little undersized. He's a defensive end. Who knows? He's got this guy more than Pipkins has a long road to hoe because there's so many guys ahead of him. So I think if you see Barnes on the roster, he may be realistically a practice squad candidate.
Gotcha.
But he has a chance to prove himself.
Sure.
So we'll see.
Everyone gets a chance. That's what we love about this part of the year. All right, let's get to the big names now. The draft picks.
Okay.
Daron Payne, first-round pick. Big boy out of Alabama.
Yeah.
I don't know. We've talked about him quite a bit on the show, when the draft happened.
Yep.
Steve, the more I watch him, the less sold I am about him. I'm going to be honest. His highlights are not that impressive to me.
Let me tell you about what is impressive about Daron Payne.
All right,
if
go
you
ahead.
watch his highlights.
Yeah. I'm going to be the naysayer. You be Mr. Sunshine.
He has a tremendous burst at the snap.
Mm-hmm.
He's got unbelievable acceleration for for a interior defensive lineman.
Okay.
He's got an unbelievable acceleration right at the snap. And when he wins, it's because he has a really good combination of speed and power. And again, I mentioned this on the last show, F equals MA, right?
Yep.
Force equals mass times acceleration. So when you have that burst and you have the power and strength that he has a potential to athletically overwhelm people, which is what he did at Alabama. This is a guy who used his athleticism and his speed and his strength to overwhelm all of the people who were in front of him. The problem with that, of course, is that doesn't work so well when you're facing the likes of Tyron Smith, for example. It doesn't work quite so well in the NFL. So I think Payne has to listen to Coach Tom Sula, and improve his technique. And so he's not so reliant on his inherent strength and power, because that's only going to take you so far in the NFL. And the other thing about Payne, I think, from a negative side to me, is that he's one of these Alabama guys. And what I mean by that, Alabama's a great, everybody knows, at least you do, Alex, that I have a big problem with Alabama. But from a defensive perspective, they're elite, clearly. But again, I just have to wonder whether these Alabama guys we bring in are going to improve a whole lot, because there's not a history of that. And, there's a bunch of great players around him. So that's always my fear with these guys.
Yeah,
but I think that's my view of Payne.
I mean, I can't disagree with some of it. When I was watching, video of him, the thing I saw was he was really not. He didn't wow me ever going after guys in the backfield, but his ability that I'm impressed by more is just his sideline to sideline stuff. If the running back's going to the outside, he works his way to the outside very quickly, even if he's on the other side of the defensive line. So I like that, but I just don't. I don't see him as the guy who's going to be a pass rush, pushing the pocket kind of guy very much.
Well, he doesn't have a history.
Yeah.
He only had 5 sacks at Alabama.
Right. That concerns me for a 13th round, or number 13 pick.
3 sacks. I said 3. I meant 5. He had 3 sacks at Alabama. But it was the nature of his position. He was more of an interior guy. And right up until the start of the 5th round of the draft, I assumed that Payne was brought in to be an interior lineman. But with the advent of, with the arrival of Tim Settle, you have to wonder if Payne's destiny may be more on the other side of Allen, him and Ioannidis sort of rotating in and out in one degree or another.
I mean, it's not a crazy thought. I mean, I did see, and I didn't know this up until a few hours ago, that Daron Payne actually came into Alabama at 350, and he slimmed down quite a lot. But I don't necessarily think you want him to get back up there to play nose tackle.
No. I mean, because again, this guy has speed and power.
Right. And
this is why I liked him more than Vita.
Necessarily to get back up there. He's only 6'2".
No. This is why I liked him more than Vita Vea. I think he's more versatile than Vea was. Vea is sort of a true nose tackle, and he had his strengths and everything.
Right.
But I think Payne is a little bit more versatile to play more positions along the defensive line. Some of you disagree with me, fine, whatever. I do think Payne's going to start out with, dedicated run stopper. He's not going to be a pass rush guy. But that's not to say that he can't be coached up to.
No. And I mean, definitely anybody can be coached up. That's why we always say wait 3 years on any draft pick, and we don't, we try not to panic.
I mean, if I had to rank order these guys in terms of potential, I'd rank Allen ahead of Payne.
Oh, definitely.
Allen
looks to me like he could be Jason Pierre-Paul level good pass rusher. I know 3-4 versus 4-3, but that's what I see.
I think so. I just think he has more potential than Payne, but we'll see. I'm excited to have him, and clearly his drafting is a sign that the Redskins were serious about improving their run defense, and that's his specialty. I can't understand half of what Payne says because he's got such a thick country accent, but he said, to the world that his thing is stopping the run.
Right.
So he's got to come in and live up to it. He does have good numbers at Alabama. I mean, 53 tackles last year is a lot for an interior defensive lineman.
That is pretty good. Let's go to the 5th round pick then, Tim Settle. You said it before. This guy's probably going to really become a nose tackle for us. Similar to what you said about McGee. Not really a play over the center 2-gap tackle. He looks to me like he's better shooting at one of the gaps.
I think so.
But I think he can get in the backfield pretty well from what I've seen.
I think a lot of people like Settle a lot higher than the 5th round. The reason why he fell to the 5th round is he had just an atrociously awful combine performance.
Right.
He ran a 5.37 40, which even for a defensive lineman is slow. Of course, it's faster than you and I could run, which is embarrassing.
Right.
But,
right. Well,
But, yeah.
We're also not 20 years old anymore.
That's true. But he has a lot of good film at Virginia Tech, and I know there's a lot of you out there who are listening that are big Virginia Tech fans who are very high on Settle. Settle's thing is athleticism, he's athletic despite his size. Yes, his weight was a tremendous problem. Yes, that's why, in part, why his combine was so bad.
By the way,
he does have potential.
Remember how we always used to hear they don't let the combine affect where they put guys? They clearly do with some guys.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
But you have to wonder, given the fact that he's 6'3", 330 pounds, I mean, you have to think that this guy has a chance to be our long-term starting nose tackle.
I think so.
And I just
hopefully.
I just can't see him moving to the outside, to the defensive end position over Ioannidis, Allen, or Payne.
No.
I just don't see it.
You might not. The only thing I'll say is he might be a nose tackle who's better against the pass than against the run, which is what traditionally it feels like nose tackles are always brought in to stop the run. I think he's a pass rushing nose tackle.
Well, I mean, interior pressure in today's game. Interior pressure on the defensive front is almost mandatory, and that's something the Redskins haven't done very well.
No, you got to collapse the center of the pocket and move that quarterback off his spot.
Yeah. I mean, we have, Ryan Kerrigan, who will get his 10 sacks from the outside, but they haven't done a good job in creating interior pressure. And so hopefully Settle's a guy who can do it right off the bat. I mean, he had 4 sacks last year at Virginia Tech playing as an interior defensive lineman, so he has potential at it. And surely to goodness, I mean, because we've got, who do we have? We've got Pipkins,
right?
Settle, Phil Taylor, and Stacey McGee. Surely between one of those guys, we can find somebody who can create pressure in the interior.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully. I mean, frankly, I look at it, I'm like, you should at least have 2 decent nose tackle options at this point with who's there.
Right. I think so.
All right. Well, we have more we need to talk about, but real quick, Steve, I want you to give me, let's say, 6 guys that you think are going to make the roster. Do you want to say 6, or will we say 7 linemen?
Well, I think they'll keep 6.
Okay.
We'll say it that way. And the locks, obviously, Allen, Ioannidis, Hood, and Payne are 4 locks. And I think McGee will make it this year. And I think Phil Taylor probably will not. I'm sad to say, but I mean, just working off history, here. And so I think the last spot is going to come down to competition between Lanier, Barnes, Pipkins, and Settle. Settle being the draft pick, I mean, you'd have to think he has a leg up on it. And if they keep 7, then Lanier's the guy.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'm going to say 6. I'm actually going to go. Your starting 3 is going to be probably McGee at nose, Allen and Payne at end.
I agree with that, by the way. I didn't say my starters, but I think you're right. That's
I'm
what I think
ballparking
about
it here.
Yeah.
And I'm actually going to say Settle becomes the N2, your second nose tackle, basically. And I'm putting Ioannidis and Lanier in as your backup ends. I think Hood. Okay. I like Hood a lot, but I don't think you need him now. I think you've got too many younger, more talented guys ahead of him.
Wait a minute. Who'd you say you had starting at your nose tackle?
Oh, McGee.
Oh, okay. I don't agree with that. Then I think they'll probably try to keep Ziggy Hood as the interior guy
as their starting nose.
Start
okay,
the season.
I mean,
for now,
it's possible
to start the season.
Yeah. It's possible. I just, I think McGee's probably better suited for it long term.
Yeah, body type he sure is,
and also he's got that bigger payday.
Right.
That salary. You've said it before, man. Like, guys have that big cap hit. It means they're probably safe.
That's exactly right. Either that, or they're going to be starting, or they're going to be gone.
Right. All right. Well, speaking of starting and gone, why don't we move on? There were some roster moves that you said happened. I honestly didn't keep up with it this week. I was pretty busy. But if you have a couple roster moves just to update us on.
Yeah, I mean, again, these aren't big deals here, but we had the rookie minicamp last weekend, and they had a whole bunch of guys in, and 3 of them won the lottery and got contracts. Vontae Diggs, linebacker, 6'2", 221 out of Connecticut. Casey Dunn, a center, 6'4", 292 pounds out of Auburn. and a wide receiver, Darvin Kidsey, 6 foot 180 out of Texas Southern. I don't know much about any of these guys. We probably won't ever see him again. We'll see. Kidsey in particular has a ton of competition. There's 12 wide receivers on the roster now, so he's really going to have to stand out. Casey Dunn, if he can prove himself, I think Casey's goal ought to be practice squatter because they need to have a dedicated center behind Chase Rouillet.
Yeah.
And so if Rouillet gets hurt, maybe Dunn can be the guy.
Well, with all the other line injuries or people who are missing at guard right now, we need everybody we can get.
Yeah, exactly right. And so, Casey, I don't think he's going to make the 53, but nor do I know anything about him realistically. One of you SEC guys can maybe tell me more. But that's his future. In terms of Vontae Diggs, he's a little undersized. 221 pounds. We have a lot of linebackers. Tough road to hoe for him. A guy like that has to stand out as a special teams ace.
Every year it seems like we have that fan favorite in practice squad, training camp, preseason favorite. Like we had, who was it, Marley last year? The 200-pound linebacker.
Yeah.
You
can't play, note for record, you cannot play linebacker in the NFL at 200 pounds.
No. And
even though if you have a cool last name and an awesome grandfather,
right.
You cannot play linebacker at 200
We need
pounds.
to do a search and see where he is now. But maybe
he's not playing football right now.
He's not?
I don't know. Last I checked, about a month ago, he was not on a roster.
Well, I'm wondering if he's in the indoor football league somewhere. Not arena.
Could be.
I know he's not in the arena league, but maybe he's in some other league.
Could be.
Yeah. But anyway, let's move on.
Well, the other roster thing real fast before you move on is we signed 7 or 8 draft picks. The only one that's unsigned now is Jerron Christian, who's the third rounder. Third rounders, there's a weird quirk of the system that allows a little bit more leeway in guarantees, which is why a lot of third rounders don't get signed. I don't want to get into it because that'll bore everybody, but he'll get signed eventually. So 7 of 8 of them are signed now, and that's a good thing. It's all slotted, numbers, so there's really nothing to negotiate.
Got it. I'm a little surprised that he's not signed by now, but
it's a weird quirk of the third round.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's move on from the on-the-field stuff to the off-the-field fun, because the Redskins made a kind of surprise move.
Yes.
I mean, all right, so we'd heard lots of rumors about Bruce Allen was out, yada, yada, yada. The Redskins made a move that, to the people who are all into the Bruce Allen conspiracy theory, it looks like a big, flashing white light, And that is that...
I wrote a column about this.
The Redskins have added a front office man, Brian Lafemina, or Lafemina. I'm going to always have trouble with that name. But he is in a role of COO, and that's interesting because that role was kind of what we all thought Bruce Allen did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, first of all, his title is President of Business Operations and Chief Operating Officer.
Right.
Bruce was never a COO. He was always a team president. It's a little odd for football teams, NFL teams, to have a president and COO. There's really not any team that has both, aside from the Dallas Cowboys.
Right.
And that's a Jerry Jones incestuous family thing. They don't count.
Yeah, and that is a little surprising. To go over this guy's background, he was in the NFL's headquarters for a couple years. He worked at Madison Square Garden for 22 years, according to the Redskins information they put out about the guy. Was the senior vice president of Madison Square Garden at one point. So he was managing business operations for the Knicks and Rangers there. I'm not clear from what they've written. Was he working for Madison Square Garden or for the two teams? Because I would assume those are separate entities up there.
Well, yeah, they're definitely separate entities, but I don't know the answer to that, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know if it matters. I don't know. We'll have to look it up for next time.
But it sounds like his background is in stadium operations more than anything.
Well, it's not so much that. It's he's a true sports business executive.
Got it.
There's a whole career path out there that's sports business executives, and this guy has sort of done it all. I mean, he's been in the league office. He's worked for the Madison Square Garden. He's worked in the front office of hockey teams. I mean, sports business is sports business to a certain extent, and this guy is that. Because Bruce Allen never was really that. he kind of fancies himself a football guy, even though he may not be. This guy Lafemina is a true sports business executive.
Right. So a quote from Lafemina when he was kind of announced. This is just what he said is, Dan first approached me about a year ago to discuss the possibility of joining the Redskins. During that time, I was able to see firsthand his passion for the Redskins, the game of football, and his decommitment to the Washington, D.C. community. Working with Bruce and Dan to develop a new stadium, or a dynamic new stadium, that matches the vibrancy of the organization and its fans will be an exciting challenge and one of our top priorities. I would also be remiss if I didn't thank everyone who I worked with at the NFL, starting with Roger Goodell, So basically, it sounds like a lot of what he's going to be in here for is improving the stadium experience now and working on the new stadium, which I find interesting that they're basically bringing in someone outside to help with the new stadium stuff.
I don't know if we really know what his role is going to be,
Sure.
Because the conspiracy theory here with this move, it's what I speculated in my column last week, is that I don't know the point of having Bruce Allen around if you have a guy who's the president of business operations and then simultaneously you have promoted people in the football ops side, because the rumor, of course, that Chris Cooley started, and I don't know if Cooley had any inside information or if he was just blabbing on like we're blabbing on now,
Right.
which is entirely possible because we say a lot of things that we realize we shouldn't have said. And when you do enough of these shows, but the conspiracy theory is that if they promote Kyle Smith to GM, the GM will run all of football operations on a football team,
Right.
And then you have Doug Williams running the player personnel part of football ops. And so then you have this guy Lafemina running business ops. Well, what really is there left for Brucey Boy to do? That's sort of the conspiracy. That was the question I raised. Mm-hmm. And the conspiracy theory then is maybe, we've heard the rumors that Dan is tired of Bruce and, like you mentioned in the Raiders thing, maybe this is Bruce's first step out the door from the franchise. Right. That's the conspiracy theory, and we'll see. Now, what's interesting is that when they announced this move, what was it, Thursday?
Yeah, I think no, Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay. When they announced this move Wednesday, they already had a president of business operations in place doing the job at the time. His name was Dennis Green.
Right, and not the Dennis Green, the former coach, just to be clear.
No, another guy. This is a white guy, not a black guy. So it's definitely not the same thing. And then Dennis looks like the opposite of a football player.
Does he look more like a Dennis? Is that it?
He looks more like a Dennis and not, not Dennis Green, the guy who was screaming about, what's Dennis's famous, what was his famous quote?
But he always looked like he was ready to throw the podium off the stage.
Oh, it was, crown him. Dennis.
Right. Crown him.
Yeah.
That was it.
They are what we thought they were.
Yeah.
You want to crown him, then
that
crown him.
with,
That's
Arizona?
not the Dennis.
Yeah.
This is not that Dennis
No.
Green. Dennis Green is a goofy-looking white guy. And so what I found was odd is that he was the president of business operations, but now Mr. Green is something called the president of hospitality. And I got to say that, as you guys know, and I've said, I've been in the building with a couple football teams. I worked with them for a while. I've never heard of a president of hospitality. And he's either like, maybe this guy is managing the cheerleader escort services. Maybe that's what it means by president of hospitality. Maybe he's directing where the cheerleaders have to go entertain people.
Right.
It's possible.
It's anything from that. He sounds like a great Walmart greeter right now. That's.
I think, in all seriousness, if I had to guess, it sounds like he may be dealing with the suite holders.
Yeah.
That may be it. But point is, he's no longer the president of business ops, and this man Lafemina is. And so it's interesting that Dan has been courting him for a year. I think that's an interesting thing.
Sure.
So I think before we really see what Lafemina does, we have to see if Bruce Allen is still here in a year.
Yeah, I mean, it very well could be, and I'm going to try and be optimistic about it, that they kind of know Bruce's act is worn out, and this is them. As opposed to Dan Snyder doing what he always does, which is blows up the bridge, he's trying to do a peaceful transition from Bruce Allen to a more stable, football-minded, experienced group of people running the show. Maybe
It's possible.
I mean, that's hopeful. Me.
I think if we see Kyle Smith get appointed GM at some point,
Right.
then I think, then Bruce may be on his way. But if he's not, maybe this is just a way to take some duties off of Bruce's hands,
Right.
and let him focus more on the football operations side of it. Because what's odd, the most weird thing to me about this is that the press release the Redskins sent us specifically stated that Lafemina reports to Dan Snyder.
Right.
That is what really threw me, because what kind of president of an organization doesn't have the CEO reporting to him?
Yeah, that's rather odd.
It's very odd. And so, to me, that means that Bruce Allen is no longer responsible for business operations for the Washington Redskins. And so, to me, then, he's, in effect, basically the president of football ops from a practical in stadium and, maybe the stadium. And so, if they promote Smith to GM, then that really sort of leaves Allen with almost nothing to do. And so I think that's the key. That's the key that we have to wait and see what happens, because this also could be a big nothing from a fan, standpoint.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll just have to see.
who can say for
How
sure?
many out- how many-
The only people who know are the people in the top of that building, and they're not talking.
Yeah, well, for example, how many of you out there have heard of Dennis Green before I mentioned him and wrote about him?
Yeah, like even I didn't really know about Dennis Green, and
I didn't know about Dennis Green until I had to write my column. Right. And by the way, I'd like to thank the Redskins very much, because I slaved all last weekend in writing this long, in-depth column about the Redskins front office, and literally 24 hours later they changed it. So thanks very much, Redskins, for that.
What?
Let's hire this. Yeah, let's hire. We're the only one. You mean we're the only team in the NFL that has a non-family member, team president directly supervising football operations? Let's fix that.
Yeah. Well, they didn't quite fix it, but
no. But I mean, they basically demoted Bruce Allen into the role.
Right. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. You and I love to speculate on this stuff, I think, more than most people.
We could do a 4-hour show on this.
We could definitely do a 4-hour show of speculation of how you should run a front office.
And we don't know anything, is the truth of the matter.
No, of course. But I think most fans, hardcore fans, have an idea of how they would like to see things run in every sport. I think that's just part of fandom. Is deep down, every fan wishes they owned the team, right? I mean, that's the point.
Oh, yeah. If I had a couple $1 billion laying around, I'd definitely go buy a team.
Yeah, right. If I had a couple $100 million, I'd buy like a minor league baseball team.
It'd be fun. Did you see that the new owner of the Panthers paid cash?
How do you have $2 billion liquid?
I don't know. That blew my mind.
I didn't know anybody had it. Like I know there's people with hundreds of billions of dollars, but I assume it's all tied up in nonsense.
It's just like a dude had this in his checking
Right.
account. Let's just whip out my checkbook and I'm going to write a check for the Carolina Panthers.
I would assume it's gold or something. Like you have to have gold at that price point.
The gold in a room the size of Fort Knox, perhaps.
Right. Gold's pretty compact if you get to the billions.
I mean, I guess Paul Allen probably did the same thing, but I don't know if anybody else could have done that. Maybe Stan Kroenke is another one that could write that big a check.
But do you think like Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos has their money not tied up in like stocks?
Well, I happen to know a little bit about Amazon because I have a friend who is fairly high up in Amazon.
Oh, okay.
And I asked him about this specifically, about Bezos' compensation, and he said that almost all of Bezos' salary is something like $100,000 a year. Very small, and almost all of his compensation are stock options.
Right.
And so probably the bulk of his wealth is tied up in stock options. And if he wants to buy, I don't know, the Seattle Seahawks, he just cashes in $2 billion in stock options.
Got it.
That's what he would do.
I mean, that's how I assume most of these billionaires are, though.
Although Gates is so rich that, and Bezos too, he may have that much in cash laying around. They're worth like $40 billion.
Well, and at least with Gates, he's got all his charity stuff that he's putting his money into, so he's probably cashed in a lot of it. To imagine to be even modestly wealthy like that.
That's not modestly wealthy. That's extraordinarily wealthy. That's like the Queen of England.
Oh, yeah.
Wealthy.
And happy birthday.
Did you watch any of the...
Happy wedding to my distant cousin, Harry.
He's your distant cousin?
I'm distantly related to them.
Alex is a part of the royal family? I didn't know this.
Like I'm 10,000
Did you score an invitation?
For the crown.
Did you score an invitation to the big wedding?
No. But fun fact, Harry did date my grandmother's niece, her brother's granddaughter.
So you're a snobby highborn person, then. I didn't realize
no.
this.
We got kicked out years ago.
You were the black sheep of the royal family.
Well, we were like the third my great-grandfather was the third son of a, important person, so he got nothing.
I'm embarrassed to say this almost, but we recorded It's Just Business show this weekend, and we did, for boring schedule reasons, we had to do it at the crack of dawn on Saturday. And so I was up at like an ungodly early hour. And so I turned the TV on, and the royal wedding was on.
Right.
And so, but when I turned it on was this like fiery American priest who was up there like thundering away at the queen with all these biblical passages, and I thought she just must have be like her, bloomers must be ready to be set on fire, because of that.
Well,
but I did watch a little bit of the royal wedding because of that.
I watched none of it. I honestly,
that the preacher got me kind of roped in. I ended up watching his entire speech because he was actually really good.
So, yeah, and she's the head of the church. It's all very confusing.
It is very confusing, but I'm sure, and then it cut right from there, right when I turned it off. It went right from the fiery American preacher to a gospel choir. It just must have driven those hoity-toity royal people crazy to see that, which is, I think great.
Yeah, well, because he married an American, and that's what's going to happen. That's why you shouldn't marry Americans, royalty.
You know what's interesting about it, in enough royal talk,
we'll
but
get
it's it gives you a little bit of hope, I think. It gave me a little bit of hope, because what we have here is a black American woman married into the royal family. And the royal family, my jokes aside, seem to accept this person. I've never seen her show. I don't know if she's a good person, bad person, but she handled all this nonsense that went on with her with a ton of grace.
Oh, yeah.
And because there was all sorts of National Enquirer stuff going on about her.
Right.
But I think it gives us all a little bit of hope if somebody like that can marry into the royal family and all is well. In the shadow of King George III's grave, no less, who was the last king of America who supported the idea of slavery in the United States. And here we have a black woman marry the future king or whatever.
There's some hope there, and a little, anything to screw over King George. F that guy.
That's good. Yeah. Even if it's several hundred years later, I'm all for it.
All right, well, I don't know if we have anything. Let's get back to football, but do we have anything else to really discuss with the Redskins? Anything that you want to mention?
No, it's the dead of the offseason, man. Not much else going on.
Well, training camp's starting soon-ish, right? I mean...
Sort of. I wouldn't call it soon, necessarily.
Every day it comes closer.
We've got a while. I mean, it's May, and we're training camp's in July, but we're getting there. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna have for those of you who are new to us, and hopefully some of you armchair guys are. We're gonna continue with this defensive line breakdown was called the position group breakdown, which is the term we invented, for like hashtag content during the off season, basically. So we're gonna continue with another position group breakdown next week. And that will go all the way through to training camp. So that's the plan long term for the next about 2 months.
Right. And, then training camp comes, and Jamal and I will get down to training camp, and we'll do some stuff down there. That's always fun, except for the heat.
Assuming we didn't tick the Redskins off last year and they throw us out.
Well, and there's like a 40% chance I did. I don't know.
It's possible. It's possible.
Okay, well, I might cut out all the royal talk, but I think that does it for this episode.
Possibly so. It was totally irrelevant and boring and everything, but, I had to bring it up.
Okay, well, that does it for this week's episode. Keep checking us out on all the social medias, which is mainly just Twitter, because none of us can figure out Instagram because we're all too old.
We have a Facebook, and we choose to ignore the Facebook.
Right. Because
don't we have a Facebook account?
Yeah, we have a Facebook account.
Do you ever do anything with it?
Because no one ever responded. No one was, I think we had 150 followers, and none of them followed anything. So, screw you, Facebook.
But we have an active and vibrant Twitter following.
Yeah. People should follow us on Twitter, and someday we'll figure out Instagram, and people can follow us on that.
Yes, which is not now.
Other than that, keep checking us out. Keep going to ticketclub.com and actually buy something there. Sign up and become a member so we can get some money, because we need money. I just paid the bill, and it's a big bill. I don't like paying it.
Yeah. And go check out Armchair All-Americans, our new affiliation. They've got a lot of great content. We look forward to working with them for the future.
Right. Okay, that should do it. Later.